is aware that they are on a running foul. Now, at that time, the guy who was being fouled what the? That's like, dude, check that out. Oh, when did you buy that?
Yeah, it's not that old.
What? How many days, Dev?
A couple days.
There you go.
The thing
so
is
that is
like
like the pizza equivalent of the green hoodie.
Here's what happened. I appreciate the offer a lot, but like, there's been a couple times that you've touched that with your foot during this,
I touched the box.
and you don't have any shoes on, so like, I'm gonna say no. What's up, guys? Welcome to a On the Road Shaw Strength podcast, and I am joined by none other than Neil and Devon, and I feel like we did this a couple months ago.
Yeah.
A couple months ago, right?
Atlantic City.
Similar positions, king of the table.
Yeah.
But now we're kind of both
On the same. Yeah,
Right.
yeah. I feel like that one was this like weird opposing like argument, and I mean there's two that came out on top. Like,
yeah.
I mean, so
Yeah.
I mean,
and
there
now
is
we're-
unless you watch
you're
that podcast.
Neil,
back.
you've come to the right side now.
Yeah, it's funny you should say that, mate, because
Yeah.
when you watch that podcast back, I think you'll find that there was one guy that was clearly in the right throughout like 99% of it. And
I think
and he was a
being
fat
right
guy.
is kind of determined by victory.
Yeah, victory. Yeah.
I don't know the outcome, but I did tell everybody that Eddie had no chance. I mean, it was pretty much what
Well, I guess that you were right in that sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
And also the whitewash thing, and I said, no, it's not going to be whitewash. What did I say? I think it was 20% chance, wasn't it? Something like that. 20% chance.
20?
20%. You said how much does he have? Did I say 20 or 25? I think I said about 20%.
I think you might have said more than that, but I don't know. Yeah, it's hard to remember. Like
In the like whirlwind of your victory.
Yeah, the victory. I mean, everything just. You know, the celebration, the parades, the like trophy holding, all this stuff.
Ticker tape.
Except I didn't get a trophy, but
Fireworks.
Yeah, I mean, like it's just wild. Like everybody just went wild. It was crazy, you know.
Yeah.
So, so here's our objective. Like I think that what we need to do is solve all of the arm wrestling world's problems, like in the next little bit here. Do you think that's possible?
Well, no.
Yeah.
But I think we could
Have a great conversation.
Well, so the objective is we're looking at making a rule set potentially for the Brian Shaw Classic.
yeah.
A working set of rules
So
that
we would go strongest arm on earth is what we're going to call it. That's what we're calling it. So that's but also for the tournament that's happening there. But I want this, and what I am coming from is obviously a strongman background, right? So what you have to think about with strongman is we're having a great contest, a very legitimate contest, but also we're entertaining the fans, right? So at the end of it, objectively, we're finding who the strongest is, but all the fans are like, wow, there's a wow factor to the event, right? So with arm wrestling, I think it's and nobody better for me to have a conversation with than you two about this, but how do we, from a arm wrestling standpoint, have a very legitimate set of rules, but that also is entertaining to the crowd? Because what I have got is feedback, and I'm coming into the sport, and a lot of people have followed me and said, oh, that's great. Like, you know, I've been a strongman fan for a lot of years. You're getting into arm wrestling. From an outside perspective, a lot of arm wrestling fans, when they're watching, if they do not understand what's happening in the setups and the battles that are happening before go is actually said, they kind of get lost in the mix a touch, right? Or can. So they're entertainment, but once the match starts and you say go, now everybody's watching. Everybody's like, wow, this is great. Like, you know, it'd be like a, you know, potentially like a UFC fight. Fighters come out, everybody's talking, you know, they're coming in, they're touching gloves. Once they ring the bell and they start, now everybody's like, all right, this is on, right? Like, and I feel like with arm wrestling, you have this build up, but the battle actually starts once you start to try to take a grip. And that there's a lot that happens right there, right? Yes, yeah. But from a fan's perspective, it's like, all right, how do we, you know, make sure the rules are very crystal clear to the athletes themselves, then also to the fans, so the fans understand what's going on and what might happen, and then how do the rules actually get enforced the way that they are written. So there is no interpretation, there is no kind of, hey, this was said in the rules, but then it's up to an interpretation to a certain extent, right? And I think this is the, and I don't know that we're going to get to the bottom of it, but I think it's like, all right, how do you bring forth that to the sport? And I know that, like, Neil, you've done things, Devon, you've done things, and like it's just how does that come across, and what's the right way to do it? And I'm genuinely asking the question because I'm trying to do research because I want to make the best event I can. And it's like, all right, well, there's been a lot of arm wrestling that's happened over the years. So how do you take the best parts of that?
Yep.
And maybe it's already been done, and maybe it needs to be done again. Like, I think it's like a very open-ended question. I don't know how to exactly, and maybe I'm not elaborating correctly on that, but it's like, hey, if you were to say, August, we're having our super matches, the two competitors walk out on the stage, here we go. What would be ideal, right? Like, what would be the ideal set, and what would empower the referees to the level that they need to be empowered, and have the athletes completely understand exactly what's going on, and then the fans understand as well?
I think do you want to lead off, mate? Do you want me to?
I think we could structure the conversation slightly. I feel like there's a few categories for discussion. There's table and dimensions. There's the match initiation. There's mid-match, and then there's kind of like time structures that surround the rounds and all that kind of thing.
Yeah. I think the last one's really important, isn't it? Because a lot of things, the rule system in many promotions that have gone on through, certainly if we focus in on the last sort of 10 years, where there are professional promotions, as we'll call them, super match promotions.
Well, you can speak more from Arm Wars too, like what's worked really well there, because a lot of this has been developed through things that you've done too.
Sure. I think there's a distinction to be made between main draw arm wrestling, or the WAF, the EAF, and so on and so on. A lot of the rules that are in place are there for a set reason and to ultimately to yield a specific set of results. So if you're looking to move through matches very, very quickly, in the case of main draw competition of that size, of that magnitude, you've got an enormous amount of athletes to move through in a set period of time, and you're looking to get it done quite quickly. When you move into professional format arm wrestling, super match arm wrestling, there's a lot more considerations to be made, mostly surrounding the fact that you are, number one, more relaxed in terms of time, ordinarily. And you're also, I would say there's an opportunity there for more interaction and discussion between referee and athletes. Because in some respects, one thing you are trying to do is to entertain the watching audience. You're looking for it to be...
Everybody's anticipating what's coming, and you want the crowd to be on the edge of their seat.
Yeah.
Right? Like that's a big component.
And also have more of an understanding of what is going on at the table. I think one of the biggest problems is people don't necessarily understand what the issues are. Why is that match being delayed? What is delaying the start? What are the things that are creating a situation where the arm wrestlers aren't able to start the match?
Sure.
And within professional arm wrestling, you've got a lot more opportunity to do that, because basic things like the athletes are mic'd up, so you can hear the interaction between arm wrestler and referee. So it's almost, I say a lot, main draw and super match are different sports, and they very much are from a refereeing perspective, from a rule set perspective. And I think that's one of the biggest considerations we've got to make right off the bat. And interestingly, in as you would automatically expect, all professional promotions have their root in and their base in amateur arm wrestling, WAF, EAF. And I think it's very important to have a direct carryover. You can see that there are a lot of similarities there. Very much like if you looked at amateur boxing and professional boxing, you can see that they are roughly based on the same set of criteria. Sure. One of them is just more extended and much more, in some respects, much more refined than the other. And I think with professional arm wrestling, there is an argument there that they should be more refined, because you're working with athletes that should be much more experienced than anyone that you're going to encounter in main draw amateur competition, even up to world level. We're talking about the best of the best.
Yeah.
What do you think, Neb?
Yeah. I would start with talking about the table. That's where I would start the conversation. Just for simplicity, you have your standard WAF table. East versus West has made adjustments to that base layout. WL made adjustments to that layout. We've learned from all that stuff. Right now, standard is standard table dimensions, 42 inches tall. 24 inches wide. You could change this. I don't know that there's a requirement to it, but if we think that on the strongest arm on earth, the athletes are going to consistently be larger than what we've traditionally been used to, we could look at changing that. I don't think it's a necessity year one, but if it just looks like everybody's going to be 6'5", 6'8" now, I think it would probably not be a bad idea to relook at that. But you also have the pads. They're 7x7. East versus West adds a centimeter to have a larger playing surface. I personally am always going to push for a larger playing surface. I think it's going to increase technical diversity. And so long as it stays balanced, so long as you push the pads equally in any direction, that's important. I think the larger playing surface also will reduce some fouls, which I think is great. People will always push whatever they have to play with. They're going to push, but I would believe that a larger playing surface, you're going to have less fouls. Also, the difference between the pin height and the pin pad is a 2-inch difference. Leagues have played with that a little bit. You want to have shorter matches, you raise it. You want to have longer matches, you lower it.
Most of those things I think aren't broken, really. I don't think from my perspective, there isn't a massive emphasis on those needing to be better. I think where there are improvements in the sport, for me, it doesn't rotate around the table or relate to the table massively. I'm not of the opinion that the thing is broken from where it is now at professional level. So if you look at the East versus West table, I think it is perfectly fine to do the job on. I really do. I don't think there's any requirement to change. As a professional arm wrestler, if you go to the East versus West table, I think most people would feel like they're able to wrestle perfectly.
Now the East versus West table did add a centimeter.
Yes,
they did.
But from where it is now, I don't think there's an.
And I agree. It doesn't require massive revolution. Just you can be aware that you can influence.
Sure,
you can.
Well, if for example you made the pad a little bit bigger, right? Yeah. Potentially for bigger guys, if that's what you have, it's less, like you said, less chance potentially of an elbow foul or something stopping the match.
I would be in favor of a slight increase in size. I think it'd probably be a good thing, but I also agree with Neil. It's not broken.
No, you don't need to necessarily.
The ultimate thing is what are you trying to? Obviously, it's your competition, so you've got to look at. Are you looking to create a situation where it's just a different and unique thing?
Sure.
Because I'm going to be biased. I look at this from a purist arm wrestling perspective.
Sure.
So, from my perspective, one of the things that I would like to see within the sport of arm wrestling, generally, is a standardized set of equipment.
Sure.
Rules as far as they can go. I think that would be a stride forward for the sport. I do think that when you have multiple connotations of effectively the same thing, usually it's just done for a promotional purpose. You know? I'm not overly enthusiastic about that. I like there to be a genuine reason why you are doing it. And I think the sport is, even if you were to take the extremes, so if you went to, the WAF table, is it not fit for purpose? Personally, I think it's fine. Yeah. The WAF table is absolutely fine. and the best guys in the world technically can compete on that. Fine, and do right
Sure.
now. You know, you can do things differently that may reduce some elements of it from a televisual or entertainment perspective, like increasing size of things. That's fine. Not a major problem with that. But I would like to see a situation where we get to, let's say you have amateur table, professional table, and the difference is professional table slightly bigger. So for me now, that's what you've got. You've got East versus West stroke king of the table, which are conducted on a professional table, slightly bigger pads, and it does a job. It does it fine.
Yeah.
If there was one change to the table that I think would be a big step forward, and I agree, it really isn't broke. I do think that we could push, but it's not broken, and I agree that there should be standardization. But I think if there was one amendment to the table, I would put the consent lights on, and I do think that flows into the rules.
Yeah, that for me is more of a. I agree. I think that's not the equipment. I think that's the rules leading to a change in the equipment.
But
so
exactly. So rules, equipment, they flow into each other.
Yeah.
But the consent indication will have a great impact on the starting of matches, which is a nightmare for the sport of arm wrestling. Sure. The starting of matches is very complicated, and the consent light option just opens up the door to very clean starts, which is what we're looking for.
I feel like that might be. Do you feel like that's the biggest point of confusion for people? Because let's just say there is a grip taken, right? Everybody's there. Do you think the fans on the outside, and maybe even the arm wrestlers themselves, don't know exactly when the referees are going to say go, and it's kind of like, hey, it's really close like this. Why are we fighting so much to make this small adjustment? But they're already there. Like you've already got your grip, and potentially, like you're saying, if both athletes are happy to go, then you probably should go.
Well, it kind of
right?
removes a lane for argument, doesn't it, mate? Really, in some respects, because a lot of it's okay. When we analyse this, you're always trying to look at what is the rationale for the complaint? Is the rationale coming from? Is it fans that are complaining?
Sure.
Is it athletes that are complaining? Where is it? What is ultimately leading to that discussion? Now, if you were looking at this at a consent thing that Devon was talking about there, which I happen to think is a great thing, I've always been very keen on that. It eliminates any argument for the athletes.
Yeah.
Because they've literally given their consent.
Yeah.
And therefore, by default, it kind of eliminates any line for a fan.
Sure.
Because the guy that they are supporting has given their consent.
That's true.
So you eliminate a great deal of that. So it's hard for me as an arm wrestler to be against it. I'd love to see the reason why it would be a negative step.
And it doesn't change the sport because the consent light is an option. It is an option to start the match. If there is no agreement, then it goes back to center of the table, wrist straight, thumb knuckle showing, center of the table, which the referee can enforce and facilitate. So
I think that's a key point, mate. I think we spoke about this at lunchtime today, and I think one of the biggest things is your referee does have to always remain the ultimate arbiter, the ultimate control.
Yeah.
You've got to have that. In all sports, that is the situation. And it needs to be, and it must be.
Yeah.
And I think that always the referee should be trusted and empowered to kind of enforce the rules as they see fit. So even though the rules need to be carefully written, that they empower the referee to the fullest.
Yes.
So that the referee, a good referee, can judge the match and base the match based off of many criteria and balance things,
and speak with authority and confidence, knowing that they're supported by that rule system.
Makes sense, yeah.
And that's the big thing. I'm a massive, I'm a massive believer in the utilisation of the sort of square in the air, as we call it.
So
Eye in the sky or whatever. You've got multiple camera angles on this thing now, and we've got instant replay. And from a professional perspective, the reason we introduced that in Arm Wars so early, and we've used it for 20 odd years, is because, again, it eliminates the contestation and it is supportive of the referee. So you can move to one referee, and if the referee is unsure about anything, if an athlete contests something, you can easily solve it by going to square in the air, and everybody in the arena and the people at home get to see what happened. There it is.
Sure.
We can see it very, very clearly from multiple angles. So if there's any concern about that, you immediately look at it, you see what the reality was. I always remember there was a very famous case for us with Michael Todd and Yoshinobu Kanai, where Yoshi had won a match. Michael felt there was an infringement, called it out. Referee went to the square in the air. We were at the Trafford Centre at the time, and they put it up on the square in the air. Now, at the time, Yoshi was absolutely not of the opinion that he fouled. He thought, no, did not foul. And so straight away was, okay, bang. Suddenly, up on top of the arena there, 50 foot by 25 foot,
Yeah.
there is the replay from 5 angles. And I always remember Yoshi walked to the front of the stage, turned around, looked up, watched from another angle, watched from another angle. There it is. It is as clear as day, beyond contestation. And I always remember he looked at me from being absolutely staunchly of the belief that he did not foul.
Yeah.
And so he looked across at me and he went, okay, fair enough. So it's done.
Well, once it's on video, for sure, you can't
can see
argue
it.
with
So instant replay for sure.
Yes, absolutely fundamental part of
Yeah.
the
Do you
whole
think,
process.
let me ask this on the replay part of it, right? Do you think there could be a little bit more of a protocol as an athlete if the replay is needed, right? So, like, for example, my match in December, there was one round where I purposely tried to do an elbow foul, but got called a losing side pin because I elbowed fouled in a losing position,
Yep.
right? And it was like, hey, wait a minute, like, let's review that. But it was almost like the referees didn't want to go, right? And then it was kind of like, I'm saying it, Devon's saying it, Jody's saying it. And then all of a sudden it's like, after all of this time that's kind of wasted in a way, then they went and looked very quickly and came back. Okay, cool, it's done. But it was like this whole ordeal to get them to even go look, right? So, like, could there be a little bit more? Again, if we're talking about leveling
that
things
does
up,
exist in certain instances now where...
so what would it be? Like, would you
So
have a
that
flag?
you can have
or would you have
the arm wrestler can literally request tennis has it really good now.
Okay, so what would...
So in
explain
tennis, you've got an opportunity where the athlete can request to the umpire that they go to what they call Hawkeye, or
Okay.
so that he can make that contest. Now, the way that it's done there is you've got a certain amount, and that can be discussed, certain amount of contests per round. Now, if you contest something and it is proven to be correct,
that?
you keep that contest opportunity alive.
Got it.
If you do it and you were wrong,
Okay.
that's it. You've used it. It
Yep.
makes sense? So everybody starts that round. You've got one around. Now, I think a very important one is that the referee is unlimited. So they can,
If they want to go back and
yeah,
look.
if they want to go back
Which
and
is
review
right.
it,
They
that
should
is
be
fine.
able-
you know?
they should be able to do a referee.
And I think that's critical. And I personally like there is a referee that's able to view things and is viewing things on that all the time. So soccer, for example, internationally now, has a thing called VAR.
Okay.
So whenever the thing is going,
Yep.
if there is a big infringement, you'll sometimes, the game is continuing. And then all of a sudden, referee will blow the whistle, hand up, wait a minute, he's just been told something. Okay, the guys in VAR have spotted that there was an infringement here that happened,
So they could call it.
Yes, and they can stop the match and suddenly you go back. And the whole arena is suddenly looking up at the jumbotrons at the side of the pitch because it's like, oh, nobody's clocked this, but there's a real, and if it's
Sure.
I think it adds to the drama. It kind of adds to the show.
Sure.
And ultimately, all of this, all it's doing is encouraging, number one, fair play.
Yeah.
Arm wrestlers to arm wrestle fairly. There's been numerous examples throughout the last few years
Yep.
in the roller coaster ride that we've been on with East versus West and King of the Table of late and so on, where there's been this kind of stuff that goes in there. And when you get that, I don't want to say controversial moment, you got that moment which is a cornerstone of the event.
Yeah.
It becomes often the talking point, the drama comes
big
from
time.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
It only becomes a problem when it's sort of left unresolved or where it's felt by the fans or by the pullers that there was an injustice.
Yeah.
Then it becomes a problem. If it's just raised, flagged, and addressed, I think it's very entertaining.
Yeah.
Then it becomes part of the show. And the more that you can educate the viewer, and the more that you can be seen to be, number one, striving for good matches and entertaining matches, and matches that end on matches, not that end on fouls. Nobody wants to see it end on fouls, you know.
No.
I think if you're seen to be and are always pursuing that, then it can only be a good thing.
Yeah.
That's my honest opinion. If you're
I'd
seen to
propose
be doing
two
that.
cards, two, and if you use it and it's not there, you lose it.
Okay.
So you have a maximum of two. Once you lose your reviews, you can no longer do it, because otherwise people could abuse it. Just could be a pain in the butt.
Two
I'd say,
per, like
two,
if you
the
had
whole thing.
So whether like best of 5, you
Whole
get 2.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
if you use one and
And it's good. You keep it.
it retains.
Yeah, you
Sure.
keep it. But if
Because you are correct.
yeah,
Correct.
if you do one review and it's not there, I'd almost say 1 or 2. 1 or 2. Yeah. You can request 1 or 2. Yeah. And if you're right, you can just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
But
can't.
I mean,
I'm fine with
here's the thing: if you did put 1,
Yeah.
Right.
1 is just fine.
it puts more pressure on the athlete
I
because
think
you got to
1
be pretty dang sure that, like, if you're going in there, because let's just say this is round 1
yeah.
or round 2, and you're like, well, I'm going to use that.
We have
Like-
2, and that's
Yeah.
for that reason. You have a situation where, or if you're in a 7-round match, we have 3. But we have a situation where we did it to increase the drama a little.
Yeah.
So it creates that situation where you do have the opportunity to do it. It's seen as very fair.
Yeah.
It does give you that opportunity where somebody thinks, okay, we want to raise it. If they're absolutely certain that there was a problem, there was an infringement, that's fine. They can raise it up. Yeah, in my experience, you don't see it used a great deal. I've not seen people take the mickey with it. Not-
And if somebody's close, I mean, the referee should look at it anyways.
Yeah.
So
They-
yeah,
they
one maximum 2.
yeah, I actually see referees use it more than anyone.
Yeah, and that's fine. Referees should be.
But in that instance, the athlete obviously doesn't lose it.
No.
You know, because if something was close, the referee should want to look at it.
And in reality, that's what you tend to see, Brian. You tend to see, particularly discussion between referees. So
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and they should have that right. To
Yeah,
go
so
to
down
the
ref
side.
spots something and he says, look, or the head ref will go, were you happy with that? You see something? And they're going, nah, you know what? I'm not sure. Maybe there was an issue there.
Yeah.
They take a step to the side of the table. They discuss it.
Yeah.
You do see a lot of that. You do see referees discuss something. And sometimes they might go, it's not going to change anything. It was fine.
Yeah. So how, in your guys' opinion, how do we make the setup more streamlined? Like to actually get going, get started. Like what could be done there?
I actually think myself and Dev are quite aligned on this. Correct me if I'm wrong, mate. But I think both of us will be on the page where the referees are aware of and happy to listen to the arm wrestler's point of view on that a little bit in terms of saying we're happy. So, for example, the consent light is the natural and more clear progression from that point where
Makes sense.
both guys are saying, I'm happy, bump, hit my consent button.
And then we're
I'm happy, bump, hit my consent button. And at that point, you've given your go-ahead for, we're okay there, that's solid, let's go.
Yeah.
You know? And I think that both myself and Devon are definitely on that same page. And I would like to hear the thoughts of a lot of other athletes on that, what they think. I'd be interested to know what the wider competitive arm wrestlers would think, particularly at high level, this kind of level, the ultimate level at the moment. East versus West and king of the table.
Sure.
Highest level guys in the world.
Yep.
Most technical guys in the world in many respects. I wonder what they would feel about that, And it'd be interesting, actually,
Yeah.
to know where people have stood on it.
Just an opinion, but I think it's like a very interesting thing, because if you could make that moment where you're obviously explaining it, communicating it, everybody gets to see, but like as a fan, I think that's a very clear way, because I mean, how many times in matches have you been very happy with your grip? and saying very famously, just say go, right? Like
And
I'm
it needs
ready.
both.
Yeah.
Both athletes need to be saying
Yeah.
that. That's the
Yeah.
thing with the consent lights. Just because I'm pushing my button, I'm saying just say go.
It's not the other.
The other guy has to say it too.
Sure.
But if both guys are in that position, it's quite simple, I think. But the question is when does it move from the athletes attempting to get a grip to the referees taking over?
Correct.
And I would suggest it's between 0 seconds and a minute. Typically, 30 seconds being the entitlement on round one, but depending on how round one goes, the referee could have the authority to immediately progress to ref grip round two, or take up to a minute and continue to take the minute. But anywhere I'd say between 0 seconds and a minute, depending on the actions of the athletes and the referee's intuition about the match.
I couldn't agree more, mate. I think, like you say, you got to, with all things considered there, if the referee had the opportunity at 30 seconds to go to referee's grip, if he or she feels that the athletes are making no attempt to get the grip, because ultimately the rules that the baseline foundation rule is you must make an attempt to get a grip.
Sure.
Okay. So after 30 seconds, if the referee feels neither of these guys are making any attempt
Then they just call
to take
it
a
there
grip,
and
they
go.
can just go straight away, right, we're going to referee's grip.
Which makes sense.
If, however, there is some nuance there which they feel it can be worked through in an additional 30 seconds, then they can let it go longer and up to a minute. After a minute, I think we could all agree really you should be getting in your grip at that
Well,
point.
it's probably. I mean, a minute
Yeah.
is pretty.
A minute's a
long to me.
long time.
If there's intent to get a grip, it should be sorted out within a minute.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, definitely.
I think that makes sense.
So if there is the requirement for the referee to step in, they'll move to some sort of a referee's grip, and the referee will start the match in the center of the table. The shoulders will be, I don't think that the shoulders need to be perfectly square. I think that, having a certain degree of openness to them, maybe a 15 degree or a 20 degree openness, I think is perfectly acceptable. I think that closing the shoulders completely is somewhat of an unnatural stance. I think that, having the shoulders completely open would be false, but the way the pads are aligned on the table, there's a little bit of offset, I think, to match that offset angle with the shoulders. Having that angle at the 90 degree of the shoulders is perfectly acceptable. Webbing, even, center of the table, and then the grip is broken down into phases. I would propose of referee's grip similar to what we saw in the era of WAL, where the referee is holding the fingertips, finding the center, instructing the athletes themselves to close the thumbs, readjusting his grip to the wrists. And this time, at this point, this is where the referee has the authority to issue fouls. Up till this point, I think that it's probably best that there's some leniency and there's some more freedom. When the command close the hands is given, you cannot cover the thumb knuckle, the wrists must remain straight. The match cannot move off center. You cannot load the match off center. But there is but those are the only requirements. So what that means is it permits subtle movements of the body, of the shoulder, whatever, and that's not a foul, but any of those infractions would result in a foul. And this, I think, is the best way. I think it's a close the hands and a go. I think that this is probably your safest and most efficient way to start matches quickly and fairly. And when it comes to the strap, the application of the strap, I think that I think that it's good the way we're doing it now, that the athlete with the buckle can dictate tightness. And I think that the current strap we're using, I think for super heavyweights it should be thicker, but I don't see the requirement to change anything.
No, it's a standardization.
With regard to the shoulder, I think what you just said there is pretty profound in a way, right? Because I think that so often you see matches where referees like, hey, shoulder in, shoulder in, shoulder in, right? And even though I truly think the athlete's not thinking about taking their shoulder back, it's just naturally kind of where it goes. It's just like, well, I'm here and my shoulder, like I'm focused right here, but that just starts happening. Like I almost have to work to keep it in. It's an interesting comment.
One of the other things that's very important there is if you look at the arm wrestlers at the table, very, very, very few occasions will you see an arm wrestler complain about the shoulder of their opponent outside of a presser.
That makes sense.
Outside of a presser. So if you've got, and this comes back again, the consent thing is a very powerful, powerful tool here. Because the way that I would really talk about that is, or the best way to articulate it is, if as an athlete I'm not worried about it, why should you?
There's a lot of power to that.
If I am the guy that is apparently being fouled upon,
sure,
and I am not bothered about that. So if I'm pulling, who's the worst I could be pulling? If I'm pulling Jerry Caderet, if I'm pulling Kamil Jablonski, and I am sure that I'm not at threat from that guy's shoulder anymore, and I am prepared to hit my consent button, or say, yeah, I'm good, then at that point, don't worry about that a great deal. I think in most matches, outside of those extreme examples where you've got a shoulder presser, which would be the optimum example of somebody who poses a threat through shoulder position, there is far more concern from arm wrestlers about what is happening in the hand and wrist and the positioning of the hand and the wrist than there would ever be around shoulder. That is mostly an accurate statement. There might be a couple of outlier examples, but not many. You often hear that from the crowd, don't you? You'll hear, shoulders, shoulders, or, somebody shouting that. And sometimes it can actually create a problem at the table, which both arm wrestlers are not happy with, because the ref forgets what he was doing, or she was doing, goes back to the shoulder, and where it was critical on the hand and wrist falls to pieces again.
The shoulder pad, the elbow pads in arm wrestling used to be straight across from each other. And the shoulder square used to be much more anatomically available to be square. But when you take the pads and you shift them open, now what you're doing is you're overly scrunching the shoulder in, which it's just not natural. So I think that now with this new table design, and it's not new, it's quite old now, but the rules need to reflect that shift,
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, and you could even put, a certain tolerance level, right? If you call it 15 degrees or something like that.
I think that's where it becomes challenging, Brian, when you say, well, what is it? Is it 5? Is it 15? Is it 10? It's a fucking consent light is what it is. If both guys are happy,
but
that eliminates that.
We're talking
necessity.
The consent light, there is no requirement with the consent light.
Yeah.
With the consent light, there is no requirement. But once you move into the refereed grip portion, that's when the shoulder angle matters.
The reason again, we're going back to the sort of, is it broke, does it really need fixing? The reality of the situation is that the square shoulders thing is not the end of the world because people have adapted to it. What they do is they'll set their body out of shape, they'll then carve something round and immediately return to
but that's
position.
Silly.
It is, but that's what it's led to. It's created that situation. And why is because from a written rule perspective, what is it? The shoulders must be straight to the table before the start of the match. Yes, that's what they need to be. How often that is actually perfectly observed, that's a different discussion.
But it is important that we should strive to write the rules the way they are applied on the table.
Correct. Very important.
So I would suggest that we just look at the angle of the center of the pad to the center of the pad, make that a line, and then do your 90 degree from that. And that is the shoulder line permitted. I think that would be a completely safe and fair application on a modern table.
So you'd have the pad corner to corner coming straight back off, and then your shoulder could be in line with that?
So
is that what you're saying?
So you draw a line. So I'm in front of an arm wrestling table.
Yeah.
I'm facing an arm wrestling table. The pads run like this.
Okay.
Right? So you draw that line, and then you do a 90 degree, and this is my shoulder line that's permittable.
Got it.
This angle off a 90-degree line.
Makes sense because the line would be here, and then
So then I am square to my opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is what it used to be when the pads were straight.
Straight.
Right. So it's the same rule, just adapted to this modern table.
Well, I mean, what would be the other than a press, somebody going directly into some type of press, the shoulder being in a different position, advantage, disadvantage, doesn't matter.
Well, you can go on and on with that. Yes, there are some differences. You could say, okay, well...
Do you think it's big enough to cause a problem?
In actuality,
'cause
does it make a difference from being straight? No, not
I
really.
guess what I would say is, like, I've watched, right, and you'll see where a lot of times a referee will lock on to that with a certain athlete, right? And they always shift out of it a little bit, right? So, like, most of the time, if you're paying attention, and this happens in a lot of matches where it's like, hey, shoulder, 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 and they keep going back to that, but that athlete keeps moving.
Yes.
So by the time go is actually said, their shoulder is not where...
Correct, Brian.
Like,
and
it's not-
often, mate, it's not because that guy, funnily enough, is trying to cheat.
No, he's
it's not at all.
focused on
It's
his
just they're a
hand
more
and
relaxed
setup.
body shape, and also their opponent is not really worried about that.
Sure.
And everybody's ultimately looking for a fair match, a match
That's
which
fair.
has started fairly. That's
shoulder-
really what everybody's going
The
for.
shoulder is important.
It's critically important, but it's not something that is the rule that Devon suggested there, for example, would not
Give
make
an
anybody
advantage.
agree
It
to
wouldn't-
do.
it would-
No,
yeah.
it wouldn't.
No, it would
massively
keep things fair.
disadvantage
Yeah.
people.
It would actually make things more accurate to the original set of rules.
That's yeah.
We've gone even further now because so we used to be straight, and now because it's shifted, now we're forcing us to start like inside.
So you have to push this in,
Right.
and you're not. It's
Yeah.
not.
And often these things, you find that they have evolved, and they've evolved out of sequence. So as Devon said a moment ago, if you go back to the original pads being straight across with the rings and the donuts and so on and so on, table was changed for safety reasons, to make it a safer position and reduce broken arms.
Okay.
Good change, great change for the sport. But the other rules which were, or the other elements of the setup did not change in line with that. And often, with any sport, you find that is the situation. With life generally, with law, you find that. I mean, I always, cite an example. I worked in the wine industry for a long period of time. And I once happened to ask a question around, so because all retailers were using 75 centilitre bottle. And I asked, why a 75 centilitre bottle? Why is that important? And nobody actually seemed to know the answer. So I went into it a little bit.
Okay.
And the actual reason why that was done is because back in the day, a person would blow the bottle. They would literally make the bottle by blowing the glass. And the average lung capacity was 75 centilitre.
Interesting.
Now, we're in a situation now where no longer blown by a human pace.
Sure, so you can make it
so there's no
whatever you want.
real reason why it needs to be. It's one of those traditions that's stuck. Simple as that. And you
Isn't
often
that
find that
interesting?
this is the way that things have evolved. Nobody's really looked into it or what the requirement of that is. It's an accepted rule. Doesn't bother anybody, and we carry on.
Yeah.
For simplicity, I would say 3 fouls, and I would say no warnings. That's what I would do. I would say the referees can counsel anytime they want, but if they want to hand something out, it's a foul, and there's 3 of them. So when we're still talking about the start of the match, all these infractions which we talked about during the referee's grip, the covering of the knuckle, the bending of the wrist, the loading off center, these would all result in fouls.
I think that would, it just again my outside opinion, and I think I need to tread lightly with what I say because I'm learning, but it's an outside perspective of what has happened, and this is something you guys have lived for how many years, right? So it's kind of like, from an outside perspective, there in my mind is always a big question of when is something actually a warning, and when does it progress to a foul, right? So it's like supposed to be, I think, kind of one warning, one foul, but then if there's a lot of talking that's happening, it puts a lot of pressure, to be fair, on a referee in a way, right? Like if you were to put yourself in their shoes to say like, hey, all right, we're talking. Okay, well that now escalated to a warning.
Yep.
And then it's like, okay, well that that took this much to escalate that to a warning. So I've got a little bit more to go before it's a foul. And then how much more do you have before it's a foul?
Yeah.
So it kind of...
I'm slightly on a
takes
different
power.
page here to Dev.
It's interesting, though, because it kind of takes away the power, in a way, from the... It puts up... Well, not takes away the power, but it puts a lot of pressure on a referee to say, like, hey, I've had enough here. Like, now we're going to... We're going to a warning, and now we're getting a foul. And then all of a sudden, it's like, well...
I kind of like the
and then-
warning thing for
and then
that
it's
reason,
not
Brian.
equal, right? So then why did one athlete get a warning and then a foul? Is it just because you don't like that athlete, or like it opens that door a little bit potentially? Potentially, it does.
I would make things very consistent.
But it can be. The point
So
I'm
what's
making
your
there
thought?
is you
What's your
could have
thought?
a situation where it doesn't matter if it's 3 fouls, 2 fouls, 2 warnings make a foul, and it's 2 fouls. Let's talk about that scenario. 2 fouls, 2 warnings make 1 foul.
Okay.
What you're doing then, if you've got a good referee,
Yep.
and a referee that can speak with authority and make decisions in the right manner,
Yep.
as long as they are very clear and everyone at the table and everyone watching is very clear, these are the rules, you're empowering the referee to give those warnings at their discretion
Yep.
for a reason. And with the awareness of the fact that they believe that arm wrestler is 1, trying to work with them, or 2, trying to be a dick.
Okay.
And I think that a good referee is very aware of that. More aware than anybody watching at home,
Yeah.
should be and needs to be less biased than anybody watching at home, and certainly less biased than the arm wrestler. Because I know a lot of arm wrestlers, and I don't know one arm wrestler or competitor in most sports or any sport that will not push to the hilt of what they can get away with.
Yeah.
And that's kind of their job. But by the same token, the referee has to be able to enforce the rules in the way they see fit. Now, the warning thing does allow a good referee who knows how to use those warnings to bring that in as a cursory look. I'm on you. I know what you're going to do with that one. Back it off, or you will be getting a foul. And I've seen some referees that are very, very good at the timing of that and the utilisation of the warnings and do a very, very good job.
Yeah.
I've seen others who are horrific.
Yeah.
I think the rules are simple. They're laid out. If there's an infraction, there's a foul. If someone requires counsel, they require counsel. But if an athlete, black and white, breaks a written rule, it's a foul. That's my opinion. And I think
Well, there shouldn't, if they're and correct me if I'm wrong, if they were written black and white, that's your rules, right? There's not a whole lot of interpretation to that. Right?
I think that can be done with warnings the same way, though, mate. I don't think it's a warnings or foul things. I just think everybody's got to be clear on. There
But
are
if it's
warnings. 2 warnings is 1 foul.
Yeah.
As long as everybody's aware that if you get 2 warnings, that is a foul. And it can be 2 fouls, 3 fouls. Wouldn't concern me a great deal as to how many.
So
Like
what is a false what is a false start?
I mean, what is a false start?
Was it a warning? Or was it a foul?
A false start can be either one. It can be a warning or a foul.
So what would it be?
For me, in my world, I would like to have warnings for false starts.
Okay, so
I think it's a
warnings-
good thing.
So warnings for false starts. So does it change? If
Let
you're in a
me
referee's grip?
take it the other way a second, Dev. Are there different kinds of false starts?
No,
Yeah, there
it's
are.
a false start.
No, there are very different kinds of false starts.
I think that it's a false start. I think that if you infract,
Can I give you an example of 2 different false starts?
Yeah, you have to elaborate on what you
One
mean
is
by
a gamed false start. So one is an intentional false start to create a certain set of criteria. It can be, for example, to understand and to learn more about what my opponent's game plan is. In other words, I do a false start to see their reaction,
Okay.
which will be a subliminal reaction.
But you think that should be a warning.
That's one kind. Okay?
Okay.
The second kind of false start is where you've got 2 athletes who are genuinely trying to be as fair as they possibly can, but they are amped up beyond belief, and they're trying to anticipate something, they mistime it, and they jump. Those are the same outcome, but they are very different. One is gaming, one is not. A good referee can see the difference between those 2 things. Very clear.
I think they're fouls. I think that if you cover the thumb knuckle, if you bend your wrist, if you load off center, that's a foul. I think it's that simple. I don't think you need to have any other quantification on it.
I mean,
Why have Why have 3 fouls then?
Just for simplicity, 3 fouls.
Well, it's also simplicity, and it's because you don't want to have a situation where matches are ending on fouls. We talked about that, and that was your ruling. That's why when I said 2, you say 3.
Well, so
it's the only reason. 3 gives you less chance of it ending on
well,
fouls.
3. Look at you can have 4 with if you do a warning system.
Yeah, you could have as many as you want. That's the point I'm making. If a referee is able to use warnings, and a referee is good, they are a good referee, they can very clearly understand what is going on here. Is this guy gaming it, or is he not?
Part of it is being a good referee, for sure.
Correct.
Right? Like,
very critical.
You can see this in every single sport.
Yeah.
It's not just in our like a good referee can control a game, make the correct calls, have the flow of the game run correctly. All of this, right? Same in arm wrestling, for sure. The question is, to what your point, right? Those 2 different false starts. If we go back to that, if it is. And again, this is simply just a debate. Like, it's fun to talk it through, right? So if you have an athlete that's trying to gain an advantage by false starting on purpose to figure out what their opponent's going to do, right?
That is the only reason why they do it.
Yeah.
That is the only reason. There is no other reason.
So, but if the pressure was there, right? So if you knew that if you false started, it was a foul, right? You know that. Like, you're getting a penalty. This is a foul. I'm going to start this match. And now let's just say it's a running foul. So I'm going to have to start this. I false started. Now I'm potentially in a match where I'm not, even if I pin them, I've already got my foul, right? Like, but I've jumped the gun early.
Yeah.
Does it change? It's an interesting thing to talk about, because does it change the approach, right? So obviously it would take out any of the I'm trying to gain an advantage by purposely I'm going to false start, because if I just get a warning and I get to restart, well, now I've learned what I wanted to learn. No harm, no foul, whatever. I didn't even get a foul. I got a warning. Now
I think there's a lot of it's a very.
It put more pressure on the athletes, but also you wouldn't get
it
into
does,
that
and it's
nonsense.
one of those things that's not an enormous point. This isn't a big point. Jump starts when they are not done with sinister intent and very significant intent.
Now here's the thing though, is as an athlete, and you guys can answer better than me in this scenario.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's just say that I'm not prepared. I am prepared. I'm kind of loaded up, but because this false start happens, I have to react to that. So you could make an argument that it takes something out of my arm because the person I'm against false started. Right? So I'm loaded and it's like, oh, there's a hit. Right?
Now here we go.
So now you kind of open up the argument that, like, maybe it should be a foul because it took something out of me.
Well, no, here we go. Now we're getting more into what we were talking about at lunchtime. And I think this is where your good referee comes in. So if you remember, just to build on the point that I said, it should be the referee should have the governance of whether or not they feel the intent of that start. Okay, the intent of that start was very different.
Yeah.
So what I called, I termed it earlier, a sinister jump start. So in other words, someone trying to hurt, damage, or injure their opponent, which is a different thing.
So
is an interpretive thing by a good referee.
Right there, Neil. And I would just, I would propose a rule that just completely covers all of that, and that's unsportsmanlike conduct.
Yes.
And it's a completely separate issue. If ever an athlete performs in a way that would intentionally injure someone, or you can just broadly say...
Correct. That's what I said earlier. We're on exactly the same page. I said, to me, that is a foul. That negates the warning.
This isn't even a foul. This is like something... You are not allowed to punch. You are not allowed to intentionally hurt. This is a sportsmanlike foul. I would say that this is up to the promoter and referee's discretion. They could kick you right out of the match. Like you are not allowed to punch someone and get a foul. Like the unsportsman. Like if you are like,
let's slow down a bit. We're going very extreme.
Right.
We've gone from 0 to 100, and when I'm talking more 0 to 20.
When you start to use the language of like, you are, what word did you use?
Sinister.
Sinister. Yeah. Like so when you describe it in a way where it's kind of outside the boundaries of sport, I think that this is not...
I'm not talking about somebody getting headbutted in the dick. Dev. I'm talking about a situation where somebody is creating a scenario for a false start. Where we're on a different page here is, I think there are not only two, I think there is a multitude of different false starts for different reasons in different circumstances.
Okay, but
and I think a good referee can see those.
They should all just be fouls.
So
I think it just gets way too complicated if you start to look at intent and this and that. I think that, look, if you false start, it's a foul. If you do something completely unsportsmanlike, this is something different. Okay.
So the result of those, and this is where it's an interesting thing to debate, right? Because somebody full of adrenaline, right? You're ready to rock and roll, right? And you jump it. And your intent is not, like, the intent is actually not there. Like, I want to go on go.
And also the distance traveled, and there's lots of different.
So you could, like, it opens up the argument, but the damage, potentially, right? Because if we're blocked in and ready, and it's like, oh, like, I wasn't ready for that, but I took something. So in that argument, potentially, if it was a foul, it puts more pressure.
In 40 years of arm wrestling, Brian, I can categorically say I have never, in 40 years, seen anyone get damage from an unintentional false start. Ever.
From an unintentional false start?
You hear what I said there?
No.
Okay. Listen again. If you've got guys in the scenario that Brian is talking about, so they're just amped up, and a fractional movement, not a sinister movement, not the, I'm going to blast through you, I'm going to take some kind of massive jump. That is a different thing. I'm talking about two guys who are actually trying to be very fair. Okay. Usually that movement is a fractional movement. And by fractional, I'm talking less than a centimetre. We're talking a tiny... It's sometimes a pulse. It's this, just a tiny pulse, nothing. They're not moving a long way off centre. I have never seen anyone injured from that. I have seen issues where someone has had something taken out of them, or damage from a guy that has gamed it, that has gone up there and tried to blast someone and move them a significant difference. And that specific example is where I am all for the empowerment of referees to go into what Devon was saying there. That is more a referee's read on that. Wasn't a jump start. We're not talking about a tiny jump start. We're talking about someone who's doing something that is unsportsmanly conduct.
Sure.
And I think that is where the warning thing is very interesting, because the reasons why warnings were brought in is for that reason. Because good referees have to have the opportunity to show that they are a good referee. There is a benefit in this referee being there because that person is a higher level referee. And particularly in professional arm wrestling, it is a very, very key thing. Yeah. We see it in all combat sports where a good ref can keep the flow of the fight. They can keep the thing moving, and they understand that. In rugby, in soccer, a good referee is a powerful thing. It's a good thing. Yeah. And I am all for the encouragement of that. I like a situation where the rules are not so scripted that they negate the benefit of a good referee. Because a good referee is a good thing to have in an arm wrestling match or in any sport.
Okay, so let's just kind of put together a few of where we're speaking from, so we can kind of try and come to like some kind of consensus. So we're speaking potentially about two different frameworks. I'm speaking a lot about a 3-foul system. Mm-hmm. You're speaking about a 2-foul system.
Actually, mate, I'm not that worried about it.
Okay,
but
we are, because the thing is, if I was talking about a 2-foul system with warnings,
I think the difference was warnings and non-warnings.
Right, but there is, in a 3-foul system, there are no warnings.
Yes.
Right, and in a 2-foul system, there's warnings.
Okay.
And when it comes
at the moment, I think they're undefined. There's a lot of promotions have done different things. I was using that as an example. So in other words, let's say for the purpose of this, in your 3-foul system, it's just three straight fouls. In my 2, it's 2 warnings, make a foul, and there's 2, that's fine. So
when it comes to the false start, like we'll look at kind of three leagues and the way they've done it. Okay, the WAL did 3-foul system, and they're describing it kind of the way I've been saying, where everything's a foul. Everything's a foul. You can go WAF, where everything is a warning on.
WAF.
I'm just talking about rule systems, and so we understand like.
Yeah, WAF is not professional arm wrestling. That's
No,
all.
I'm just saying, like, to understand rule systems, to understand the foul layouts, to understand, like, so in WAF, okay, you have, so if we are having our own grip before you're placed in the referee's grip, an early start is a warning. But once you move into a referee's grip, it's a foul, okay? So there's a little differentiation there, okay? In professional side, which uses WAF rules, East versus West, okay, they have made it always a warning, even in a referee's grip, okay? So there's a little bit of change between the rules. I think that the first thing you have to decide upon is, you know, what you're comfortable with. Do you want a warning and a foul system, or do you want a straight foul system? Do you want 2 fouls? Do you want 3 fouls? Do you want warnings and fouls? Like,
Isn't it interesting, though, that at the time of the WAL, which I want to go on record as saying I loved,
me too.
I was a massive fan of, the comments of the fans and the purists of the sport in tandem was it's a bit Wild West.
Yeah.
But the
It's
truth
not
is,
absorbed correctly.
the
That
truth-
was the feedback.
But the truth is if you had put professional arm wrestling on any stage with any set of rules, like I actually believe that WAF rules are more exploitable than WAL rules in the way that they're written, in the way that they can be abused and manipulated. There's way more holes in a WAF.
Yeah, if you go in looking to game it, you can game it hard.
WAF
This
can
is
be
why a
gamed
referee is
way
critical,
more.
and that's why I was making those points. It's a different mindset. The guy that's going in there to cheat, and the guy that's going in there to get...
2 points on that, right? So, like you're saying, a referee interpretation, which...
Yes.
Let's go to the game of basketball, for example, right? Like, you can clearly see, for example, when somebody flops, right? Like, oh my God, I got hit so hard I fell down. And we see it now probably more in the game, like where you see the clips of, you know, different guys in the NBA and they got just a touch and they're like, oh my God, I'm falling into the fan. You know, like the front row, I'm taken out because I got like just touched like this,
Yes.
right? So that's an interpretation, but you know, them playing it back, like if you don't fully see it, maybe the guy actually draws a call because it's, you know, so there's a little bit of that back and forth, and then, you know, maybe a charge, right? So like an offensive player comes down, goes into a defensive player, that defensive player has position, and there's a lot of debate about this, like when is it right? And, you know, the NBA's put kind of like a circle where you have to be outside that circle to take a charge,
Sure.
you know, that type of thing. So that's a referee's interpretation. When is it a foul?
Yeah.
When is it a travel? When are these things done? And that has to happen for the game of basketball to be played. The other side of this is, as you go up in levels with athletes, right? So like in strongman, let's move over to that. I made a very, very, very strong argument that once you are in the top 10 in the world, there does not, from a referee, there does not need to be a warning, right? So it's like, you know, for example, you know, and there's clips of me out there saying this, like there's a, you know, big Viking press event in the sport, and I said, all right, we're going through the rules, we're having our rules meeting. I said, I am not in agreement that there should ever be a warning to any of us, because we're the best. We
Yeah,
are
you
the
know it
best.
inside out.
And you should not have to you shouldn't be able to get credit for a rep with getting a warning because you did something wrong, right? So like this Viking press is like, we're big, like double dip the form, and I was like, just why are you given a warning? Because if one athlete does all the reps perfectly, and another athlete does the let's just say they do the same amount of reps, but they get it with one warning, it's not fair.
Okay,
right?
just to
So
make
you
one
should take it out.
distinction, though, here,
as
Brian.
yeah, but let me finish real quick.
Okay.
So as a top-level arm wrestler, in any of these scenarios, there's gamesmanship to a certain point, right? Where you're trying to gain position, gain an advantage, and then there is you not executing as a top-level professional athlete, right? You're not doing something correctly, right? So like in the start, whether it's this false start or you're, you know, gaming the grip a little bit, or you're moving when you shouldn't be moving, this type of thing. It's like, when does it become you shouldn't get a warning and you should go straight to a foul? That's the interesting debate. But again, then it's so those two scenarios I just said. It's one is a referee interpretation, and also actually the strongman is also referee's interpretation. When does a warning come out? So you have to have a top level referee
I would be
in any
far
of these
more.
scenarios. But the athletes do play a role.
I would be far more on the side of having a very clear, very straight foul system.
Okay.
If I was in something like strongman or where it is an equipment-based,
Yeah.
isolated scenario where there's an athlete and a piece of equipment and a set of criteria.
Sure.
Where it becomes much more complex with arm wrestling is because it is purely combative.
100%.
And you have a situation where there are athletes within the game who are 100% aware of and focused upon attacking their opponent through the rule system.
Okay.
And creating that scenario. And we've seen massive amount of athletes come in and do that very, very effectively. And we've seen an enormous amount of changes to rules, which then are sometimes enforced incorrectly because the referees are in a situation where they feel like the letter of the law. And under questioning, the referee has pointed to that letter of the law as the reason they made the decision, which, under scrutiny, is in fact wrong. A case in point would be Dave Chaffee, Vitaly Laletin, when the call was made that Vitaly Laletin actively pushed Dave Chaffee off the pad, and those were the written rules. If you go to push the guy off the pad, it is a foul on you. When you look at that match, there is no way that Vitaly Laletin was trying to push Dave Chaffee off the pad. That is not what he was trying to do. Okay. You can see by the direction the guy was going to pin him. He was trying to pin him. Now that in itself gives you an example of where you want the referee to be able to make that decision on their own. You want the referee to be able to look at that and say, no, that is not what he was doing. So I get what Dev's saying there about you've got to have these clear rules, and I'm all in favour of that. Awesome.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, I think it's a very dangerous situation to try have something which is boxed in and finite in a sport where often there is an enormous amount of moving points and there is an enormous amount of gamesmanship and specific intent there.
Sure.
Yeah, that's a bad rule. That's a bad rule. I think that, I mean, that's exactly a great rule to talk about. Your elbow pad, your foul. You know, forget about intent. Your job.
See, I disagree with that.
Your job is to keep your elbow on.
I disagree with it entirely. I love Dev, but I disagree with that entirely. I think there are very, very clear examples of the difference. I could show you if we're in a match, okay, and Dev has busted me wide open,
okay,
and we're in this situation, okay. I'm going to move that way, and I have nowhere to go, nothing to do, make no attempt whatsoever to fight my way back in the match. Look at his elbow, where it is. In some instances, actually go elbow, so that the referee focuses on it, and then go and push, and then shout elbow. That is clear. I tried to foul him out of the match. Very, very clear.
I don't really care. To me,
very clear.
My elbow pad, my foul.
Yeah.
You know, you want to push a guy off.
Just for sake of argument, could that go under potentially an unsportsmanlike?
I think, it does now. It goes, you've tried to push the guy off the pad.
So instead of it, it's...
And what I'm saying, Brian, is that a good referee can very clearly make a distinction there.
Okay.
So and now the sport allows for that.
Way and you disagree. Yeah. It's
your elbow pad, keep your elbow on your pad. You can push somebody's elbow off the pad. That's their foul. I don't. Yeah. It gets too complicated.
It's like as we dig into it, it's like
it gets too complicated.
What I'm getting at is there. It's like, let's say, you know, you have to have a situation where a referee can clearly make a distinction between Vitaly Laletin being in this situation or anybody in this situation when they are pushing down at the pad like this in a slow, controlled manner, where they're trying to push down,
versus
and your opponent's elbow comes off the back of the pad, to a guy who is busted, is not going for the pad in any way.
Why
He's in
can't
a
you-
terrible losing position
Why can't
and
you
just
keep
pushes
your,
off the pad shouting elbow. That's a different
Why
thing.
can't you keep your elbow on your pad?
Mate, it's a different thing.
Well, why can't you keep your elbow on the pad?
Honestly,
I feel like that's the job of an arm wrestler.
because when you're in that situation and you're in an attacking movement, it's not even difficult to time it so that I foul you out if I'm gutless and I want to do that and I'm looking for a way out of the match.
I'm aware of that possibility, which I should be.
It's like saying, why did Mike Tyson, why did Evander Holyfield, not the rule, say, defend yourself at all time? Why didn't you stop him from biting your kid ear off? Well, it's a little bit of a nuance. It's outside. He spat his gum shield out and bit my fucking ear off. It's a bit different.
I think it's entirely.
I mean, I feel like you just went from like this level to biting an ear off.
But what I'm getting at, well, we both are a little bit, aren't we?
think
We
it's
can clearly see if we had video evidence, James, right now, if we were looking at the examples that I'm talking about,
Yeah.
they are night and day difference. It does not take.
Right. So just simplify it.
But that isn't simplifying it.
Yes, it is. It's
It is.
absolutely simple. It's removing all the interpretation. This is my elbow pad.
No, it isn't. It's clearly not simplifying it,
It's
is it? What
absolutely
you've just
simplifying
done is empower the guy who is effectively got no option, is losing the match, is a gutless cheat, and wants to foul you out.
It's not that simple.
It is that simple.
No, you can't just push people's elbows off. That's not how arm wrestling works. You can't just push somebody's elbow off the pad.
Yeah, you can.
You can't.
You can.
You can't. Otherwise, people would do it all the time.
They do.
They don't. It's
they
extremely rare. Tell me how many.
Yeah, but that's
happens like
it's rare
once in a blue
because
moon.
it's rare because most people now are aware of the fact that if you try to do it, put it this way,
It's
it was
very
not
hard to
rare
do.
enough that it became a discussed topic.
It's really hard to do. It's even guys who are going for the pin, like pressing. It's a danger. It's hard to keep your elbow on the pad against the guy who's pushing it. It's one of the things that can happen. Your arm can go down, or your elbow can go off the back. A lot of times, very, very common is open arm top rollers against pressers. Okay, they're going to box the open arm top roller in where they either can let their arm go down or their elbow can come off, and then there's the argument or whatever. But if you just make it very simple, your elbow stays on your pad, then it just eliminates everything.
Let me ask you a question, Dev. If it's so rare and so hard to do, why did it become an enormous talking point, so big in fact, that it was acted upon and a specific rule introduced to negate it?
Right. No, I mean, obviously,
Why was that?
It's something that people do. But the thing is you have to pick, are you gonna let this be a part of arm wrestling? I think, or are you gonna foul people for something it's really weird?
We've got to be careful
could
we
it
don't go
fall-
on a tangent here.
Yeah,
The
could
actual
it fall
point we're
under-
making,
Yeah,
you
could
can
that
see
fall
it.
under unsportsmanlike?
It does.
Like if you could see
Yeah.
it, right? Like, and it was like, hey,
Yeah.
the rules there, just keep your elbow on your pad. But if it's an unsportsmanlike,
Yeah, which
you can
shoved you off.
see clearly that's like, that is my only intent is that, right? Like, I'm not trying to pick, but if you're going, somebody's in a press, they're going and they're putting a lot of pressure that way, you can't necessarily let your elbow come off to get out of the situation, right? Like, you're going to have to deal with that somehow. And you do in fact have to keep that because there's a lot of pressure going that way.
That is exactly where it is now, Brian. So you've got a situation where the reason that exists is because of that distinction. The point I was making and how we arrived there is that a good referee can see these things.
Yeah.
And sometimes by making a rule which is taking away the power of the referee to make that very easy, very clear decision that an experienced ref would be able to make.
Well, you could, and the thing is too, video replay, right?
Correct.
So like, but I think that you could also put it just under unsportsmanlike. That's an unsportsmanlike move.
Yep.
Right.
We've just pointed out some examples where high-level referees have screwed up the rule. So clearly it's not as easy as we'd like to believe, even with world-level referees.
Yeah.
That's one of the arguments why I want to just keep it simple. We all understand. We all understand. There is no more debate. It is.
It just is what it is.
It is what it is. And if you want to win by pushing a guy's elbow off the pad, then that's how you win. That's just fine. I don't care. But it removes the ambiguity from it. And I'd go back and I'd say, So we recap. I think three foul. I think everything's a foul. I think I believe in running fouls. I believe in all slips go to strap. I believe in foul in a losing position in between the peg and the pin pad.
Wait a minute. Whoa. Switch out of mind. Walk that one by me again.
So that's the same as the East versus West.
So foul in a losing position. Okay.
Foul in a losing position is defined as a foul that occurs in between the hand peg height and the pin pad height.
See, I disagree with that.
Why?
Same rule is it. Keep it simple. You either pin a guy or you don't. Who's losing position? Losing position is, it's at high. Well,
actually,
not necessarily.
I agree with you.
Position.
I agree with you. So long as it's running fouls. So long as it's running fouls.
Now we're talking. I agree. Running fouls.
Okay.
And there is no foul in a losing position. There is no losing position.
I agree
Keep
with
it
that.
simple. You pin a guy. To me, that's like in a boxing match. You hit a dude, and he's swaying all over the place. He was nearly knocked out. And you stop at that point and go, well, he was going to be knocked out. No, he's either knocked
So long
out
as it's
or
running
he's
foul.
not.
Okay.
If you decide to go with stop foul, if it's a stop foul system, then I think that it should be that. If it's a stop foul, but
Running foul.
Personally, for me, running fouls is the best form. No slipping. There is no losing position. The losing position is when you lost.
Yeah. You
Until
hit the
that, you're still alive. Oh, I like guys to be able to compete within a millimetre of the pad. Unless you've pinned them, they're still alive.
Okay.
Because we talk about being able to game it, what you do then is you get the guy that's got a guy really near the pad, and they initiate the slip out and go, oh, he was in a losing position. And to the untrained eye, he was. Eliminate that entirely. There is no losing position. You'll know if it's a losing position. You'll beat the dude.
Makes sense.
If you haven't beat the dude, well, he wasn't in a losing position, was he? You didn't beat him.
on slips and straps and fouls, I would say that all slips go to straps.
Yeah.
I would say that slip in a losing position is straps.
Correct.
I would say that if you foul and then slip, it is a restart without a strap and you have a foul.
Say that last one again.
So Neil and I are arm wrestling.
Yep.
I foul and then I slip.
Okay.
You start the match again and I only have a foul. I do not get the strap.
Correct. All we agree on.
Okay.
100% agree. And the reason for
Foul,
that
then
is it
slip.
encourages arm wrestling, and it encourages arm wrestling matches to finish on pins, not fouls.
Got it.
Here's a tricky one. Dangerous position. Shoulder across the table and decline humerus right now by most leagues.
Oh, God, I'm going to be so unpopular in a minute.
Yeah, I'll probably be right there with you. So right now the way the rule is the shoulder cannot cross the center line of the table at any time.
Okay.
And the shoulder cannot dip below 90, so dip below parallel with the floor, so decline humerus they call it, when in a neutral or losing position. Okay? If you're on offense, that's fine.
Essentially a king's move.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. So these are considered fouls in what we see today at East versus West. You know, if you have a running foul, you could choose to call it that way. You could choose to remove these dangerous positions from professional arm wrestling. Yeah.
See, okay, here we go. There's always one, and I am that guy. I'll come in and sound like a dick now to people, but for me, if you're a professional arm wrestler,
Yeah.
there is no losing dangerous position. There is no... I just think you should be able to pull in any and all positions, and it is up to you to keep yourself safe.
Okay.
And you're good. And I would be absolutely mortified if somebody who's not at that arm wrestling table told me that I was in a bad, dangerous position when I've been arm wrestling for 15, 20 years, 10 years, whatever it is. And I'm
Well, if you get in the position, is it a bad position?
if I want to break my arm,
Yeah.
let me break it. I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I'm trained. If I'm not trained and I'm not absolutely technically what am I doing at the highest level of arm wrestling?
Sure.
It's almost like saying, with comparison to, and let me be very clear, I'm not talking about at amateur level. Different thing.
Okay.
You go to amateur competition, declined humerus, all of these dangerous positions, any and all. I'm 100% endorse that because you are dealing with novice, inexperienced arm wrestlers.
Okay.
Very much like I said earlier, amateur boxing, head guards, 3 rounds, guy gets hit hard, referee comes in, stops the fight. As soon as you're a professional, son, the head guard's coming off.
Sure.
And fight. Because it's a fight.
Okay.
And when we get up there and you call yourself a high-level professional arm wrestler, world class,
Yep.
I don't need a referee telling me I'm safe or no, I'm good.
I'll dig a little bit. I'll tell you, I agree with pretty much everything you said so far, but I dig. Okay, so shoulder cross center.
Shoulder across center is, for me, a very, very interesting one. I don't govern that on dangerous. I govern that on positional advantage. To me, it's a slightly different. What are we talking from a dangerous, or are we talking?
I'm talking about it just as a foul. Is it a foul? Because to me, I don't have a problem with people putting their shoulders across center. But the thing is, we can both do it, and then there's body contact, and then
whoa, see, different.
Well,
shoulder across center, one thing. Body contact, different. Body contact, foul, definitely.
Well, it becomes an issue because you can cross the center line. If we both are allowed to cross the center line,
hence me saying that I think it's an interesting one.
Right.
If you come across the center and it's encouraging, but I personally don't like shoulder across the center line for that reason.
So if there's body contact, it's the person who's on the other side of the table.
Mm-hmm. I don't like body contact is a foul, immediate foul. It's not.
It's the foul for the person who is on the other side of the table.
It's a foul for the person whose shoulder is crossed the center line and is engaged the shoulder into the match.
Agree.
Yes.
Okay. Otherwise, you can do it. I agree. Okay. So shoulder is fine. If there's any kind of body contact, which is where the safety issue is, it's the infringement on the athlete who crossed center.
Correct.
Okay. Shoulder below. So decline humerus.
A professional level.
Yeah.
Okay. For me, couldn't care less. That's just me. Okay? Now there's we are opening a Pandora's box of issues.
This will be your most controversial rule.
Okay.
By far,
this
always.
would be your most controversial. I agree with Neil. I think it's totally fine because both guys are allowed to do it. Okay. A lot of people feel very strongly about this.
Yep.
I don't. I think that you should be allowed to do whatever you want. Both people are allowed to do it. However, there is some stuff that needs to be discussed. Okay, so what's going to happen is the elbow is going to lift above the pad. Okay? So typically what the rule has been with the elbow is if the elbow is over top of the pad and part of the arm is in contact with the pad, it is not an elbow foul. Okay. So that's kind of how you talk. But if the elbow is up and the arm comes up, then it's a foul.
You've got to look at why that is in there. We're talking here about dangerous positions, okay?
Yeah.
And for the reason that I said earlier, that's why it's less concerned. If you're worried about this being some kind of a cheat move, or that's a different angle of discussion entirely.
Okay.
Let's
take the angle of danger then. How many people have got hurt in that position with a declined humerus?
It's not statistically unsafe.
I mean, is there an argument to be made?
There's a hyperextension. That's why it's there. It's because
hyperextension of the elbow.
You could end up with all kinds of significant injuries.
Exactly.
You put yourself.
This is the
100%.
thing. For me, once you go and you are professional, it's on. You know what you're doing.
Yeah,
and that's it.
Well, there's a risk to anything, but
yeah.
I mean, if you put yourself there, and it happens, you're kind of asking for it. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So
for me, I am very much on the page that at that level, with the governance of that or the rule being safety, I wouldn't get involved in it. There's an entirely different school of thought around it is not aesthetically pleasing.
Okay.
It is boring. It is long-winded. It creates matches where they are static.
Okay, so
that's a different thing.
Let's unpack that then.
I don't have a problem with that myself. I hear that argument all the time. It's not what people consider to be arm wrestling. It's unaesthetic. I don't share that at all. I don't.
Right, so again, we're on a different page here, as Dev knows. I'm not like people say, would you ban the King's move, restrict the King's move? I'm kind of a weird mongrel dog here because no, I would not. Do I like the King's move? No. Do I think it's aesthetically pleasing? Horrific. Terrible. Ugly, awful move. Not what I like at all.
Yeah.
Do I appreciate what it does? Massively. It's a horrific move. It's very difficult to counter. It's very hard. It's very static in nature visually.
Okay.
So if you get two guys that are... It's a very defensive-based move. It's an incredibly effective defensive move. So if you were to say to me, okay, Neil, I love fight sports. Are you a fan of The Guard? Are you a fan of watching matches go to the ground and sit in the guard? No, I'm not. I like visceral, active matches, but you can't eliminate
I would say
it.
most MMA fans
Of course,
agree with that. I mean,
but on the other hand, you
there's a
can't
technical
eliminate it
component.
because it's incredibly effective.
Of course, yeah.
And I see this as a similar thing. It is an incredibly effective, pronation-based defensive strategy, which is very hard to overcome and to counter. Therefore, you got to leave it alone and get good enough to combat it.
Fair enough.
Devon is a fan of it visually as well. I'm not. But we're both on the same page in that I would not restrict it and don't restrict it. Again, it's an open school of thought. There are exceptional arm wrestlers that are very much against this. You know, Giannis Amelins and Devon not long ago had a long discussion around this. Engin would be very against the King's move. Many other Hermes would be very against. Many.
Well, if you put,
other guys wouldn't. It depends on the person.
If you got your arm in that position, and for some reason it was like, yep, you put your arm there, it's like a 90% chance you're breaking it, right? Like then you would say like that's probably a very bad thing to have happen because you don't want to see athletes get hurt. But if you're saying, as I asked the question, okay, are we talking higher injury risk? And it doesn't seem like that's a tangible thing to have a higher injury risk there, right? So now you're talking about
not at this level, mate.
Aesthetic, how does it look? But you can get your arm there, right? So if you're not fouling, you can get your arm there.
Yep.
And there's not really a tangible higher risk of getting hurt. Maybe you can hyperextend the elbow, like whatever.
Do you know the irony there?
Yeah.
Is if at this level, the risk is often as great for the guy that is trying to combat the King's move, amazingly. So your mega King's move exponents, let's talk about Michael Todd, for example. Crazy George would be another example.
Okay.
Many guys have been injured trying to get around the King's move on exceptional King's movers.
Okay.
Because they become extremely fatigued, become panicked, start to hit very hard, and it can create issues and damage.
Okay.
That's an interesting one. Most of the guys that are the high-level exponents, Michael and Crazy George, as I mentioned, in these two examples, he's another one.
Yeah.
There are others. Very rarely get hurt. They don't get hurt. They don't. It looks like they should get hurt, but don't.
Yeah.
So it's hard to make an argument that they are arm wrestling dangerously. They never seem to get hurt in the worst position visually that you can be in.
I think that there's certainly some balance between these two rules. If you allow the one, you should probably allow the other. If you disallow the one, you should disallow the other. So, like, if you let people drop below in a defensive position, you should allow certainly people to move their shoulders forward of center, just to balance off that kind of trade. And if you don't allow the one, then you certainly can't allow the other.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. What would the major difference be with the humorous angle? I guess that's another question, right? So what's like if you're allowing a King's move, but you can't have the humorous drop down, it's still a King's move. It's still there, right? But like, what is that slight change? In the humorous
the big
level
thing has
change?
been A side of the table, B side of the table. So winning side, losing side. Someone is in the losing half of the table, and they have declined humorous. big problem?
There's a lot of issues that surround the King's move. The King's move is probably one of the most debated arm wrestling rules in the history of the sport.
Maybe the most.
Certainly.
When you go humorous down, does it give you an advantage? Like what does it do?
I can explain this one pretty good for you. So the thing is with the King's move is as the King's move is a dragging and pronational move. And the thing is the closer you are to the pin line, the tighter the move gets. Okay. So even to compound that, the lower I can get with my body, the more force I can generate, because the move becomes more powerful the more the arm is extended, because there's a lot of binding and dragging. So one of the strengths is a dragging strength, is a pronational strength, but you see where this move becomes very, very spicy is the King's move is practiced primarily by extremely veteran arm wrestlers. Okay, guys who've been arm wrestling like 20 years, 30 years, okay? What happens in arm wrestling, the same way wrestlers get cauliflower ears, arm wrestlers get a restricted range on their elbows. Okay, so this is straight, right? So what happens when you start to be able to work with this is the way your body adapts is at the end of the range, there's a tightening that happens. So I have my muscular strength, but then as you approach the end of the range, the joint tightens.
Sure.
And it binds. And you're not actually at the end of the range, but right before you have a protective mechanism that gives you a little bit of added strength. So when you have a person who lacks range, they don't have to dip as low. So a person like myself or like Michael or Crazy George, their King's move kicks in much earlier.
Makes sense.
Okay? If you have a completely straight and healthy arm, you actually do need to really have that hyperextension, But so the King's move rule, the way it is currently, does not stop this.
Sure.
It doesn't.
I guess that's kind of my question. Is it doesn't seem like it stops.
It doesn't.
So what the controversy around the humorous angle? That's where
so
like
it just
the questioning
makes this.
comes
It
in.
just so basically it's this frustrated argument.
Okay.
Which really doesn't solve anything.
Okay.
Okay. Michael's still King's moving. I'm still King's moving. Crazy George is still King's moving. You're not stopping it. Okay. You're not stopping this technique. You're not stopping this option. But by having this rule here, you're kind of taking some of the extreme horsepower out of it.
Okay.
Like you could like Crazy George is probably the reason this rule was put into place. Yes. Like
Up there.
I think so. So
Anatoly Monosiev and George, yeah.
So George was ridiculous. Like he was really good, and the rule change happened right around George's real peak of strength, I think. So what George used to do is immediately just drop.
Okay.
Just drop. And there's a lot of technique to what he's doing. But if you play it wrong, he'll put you in a place where it is very difficult to come back from. And a certain type of people would get very frustrated by that, okay? And they wanted to disallow it. They wanted to ban it. Flattering for George. So they did make rule adjustments. It doesn't stop it. George was just as successful afterwards, okay?
I think Michael was another one that was very he was critically important in this discussion.
Yeah.
Michael was reinvented himself from a certain style of arm wrestler to a very much King's move based arm wrestler, and had a exceptional level of success doing that.
It's interesting that a lot of the people out there coined the WAL as like a circus and a clown league because of the King's move. But the truth is that the WAL was the ones who initiated the declined humerus foul. Like they're the ones who started it. Like they did it before the WAF. The WAF, I think, still doesn't have the rule. I think the
Maybe
WAF
not. It certainly didn't.
I
It
think
may
the-
have, if it has updated, it's recent.
I think the WAF still is. They tell you to stand up, and you have to stand up within
Yeah.
it, and then you can dip down again. And I think that they made a Jeff Hale amendment where you have like you can do it like 3 times or something, and then they.
So what are your guys' takes on it then? I mean, we've obviously.
I've got to sort of support my. I don't enforce it in Arm Wars.
So you're allowed to have whatever
yes.
angle. Okay.
Now that's just because that is my take on it. I kind of understand where I would sit there and talk to Giannis, Engin, Hermes, whoever is not a fan of this. And I get it. I know what they say their points, and I get where they're coming from.
You can see both sides
Yeah,
for sure.
because I'm not a fan of the King's move. Somebody says, "Do you love the King's move?" No, I don't. I don't like the King's move to look at. I think it's aesthetically pretty boring. I like the more orthodox styles of arm wrestling because they are more visceral in nature.
Yep.
And they're less static and less constrictor-like. I personally think that it's difficult to shut out things because you personally dislike them. So I've stopped myself from doing that, if you will. I've stepped outside and thought, well, I want to be someone that when they throw dirt on me, I can say that I embraced all forms of pulling.
Sure.
And that's pretty much probably the reason why I've gone that route, if I'm honest.
Makes sense.
I'm a fan of all the moves. I think all the moves are wonderful.
Yeah.
I don't care if you're a flopper. I think they're all great, and I personally think that it's good to have it. A lot of people view it as some unstoppable thing. It's not.
Yeah.
No.
It's not. It's not some magical move that when you do it, nobody can beat you. This is just simply not the case. The people who are champions in any move are not champions because they have some unbeatable move. They're champions because they're good arm wrestlers.
We've just seen it. I mean, Hermes just beat Mike.
Right. Yeah, conventional arm wrestling. Conventional arm wrestling is probably the best type of arm wrestling.
Yeah.
So I would say that you open it up, you let everybody do everything at the pro level. I would never change these rules for amateurs because
That's fair. That's fair.
Because there, the danger is a thing.
they will hyperextend.
Yes.
You will.
Yeah.
Like if you're an amateur and you do this move, you're going to hyperextend your elbow, and that's so you can't do that. But if you're a pro, if you're arm wrestling at a professional level, I'm all for what we discussed.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best thing, and I think you'll have better matches and more entertaining techniques, and I think it'll be better.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
I feel like,
So I think we're pretty much. I think the only thing we're not really clear on is if we do 3 fouls or 2 foul with warning system.
Yeah, and the thing is, from my perspective, it's not a hill I'm prepared to die on. You know what I mean?
Yeah, me either.
It's not that.
Me either. It's really like it's
fair.
fine either way. Really, like the fouls and the warnings is fine.
Sure.
3 fouls is fine. I like the simplicity of 3. I like the simplicity of no warnings or fouls. It's just one thing. But it doesn't really matter. It wouldn't change the sport.
No.
Really.
Yeah. I think for example, I'm not one of the guys that would be along the lines, there's loads of issues with arm wrestling's rule system.
Sure.
I'm really not. I can go to, we're here for East versus West 17. For me, it's going to be mega. And I think there's a big, there's an entertainment factor with some of this stuff. I think that a lot of the issues that get brought up are brought up because of passion. Because of
course.
If an arm wrestler loses or has an issue, often you need to find a justification because that guy couldn't possibly have lost. The reality of all sport is that we see this manifest itself in all sports with entirely different reasons. We'll always find reasons to make excuses. It isn't particularly broke. The sport is in the ascendancy because it's got so many good things to offer.
Yeah.
There are around the consent side of things. Why I like that and why I think probably Dev likes that is because It's a very quick fix to a lot of the things that are slowing
No,
the
it
starts
seems
down.
like-
That's really the
yeah.
one there, you know.
I think it's a lot of good points, man. And I mean, the knowledge that obviously both of you guys have is like immense, you know, in this. And it's, you know, it's something that it's not the first time you thought about it, right? And it's just kind of like coming in, you know, I think that it's trying to learn, right, in the perspective. And what I really hope in a lot of ways, like people listen to this, like, okay, like I get it. I understand like where things are coming from, but it's also educating the new fans on what the rules are,
Yeah.
right? And giving the referees the power to do what they need to do, giving the athletes the rules very clearly so they understand what parameters they can work within. And then there's no questions. I mean, it's just, you know, it's no different than, well, it is different in certain capacities than the way that we'll do the rules for the strongman contest with the strongest man on earth. It's like, it needs to be very clear cut.
Yes.
Right? And there's been too many rules meetings in strongman that I have left. And it's like, well, there's how many gray areas do you want to leave going into this contest where it's up to the interpretation? The athletes don't even know what's going on. Is a big problem, right? So like within arm wrestling, I think if you could take steps like we're talking about right now, potentially to make it more clear cut, it's going to make the athletes happier, right? It's going to make the fans happier. It's going to make the referees happier, right? Like essentially everybody should be happier if you have a clear cut way of doing it. So it's a very interesting conversation. So
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there might be the 10 purists that are still tuned in.
yeah. We have more than that. Yeah.
I think we pretty much so we agree on the dangerous positions.
Yep.
We agree on
At this level.
Yeah, at the professional level, we agree on all things strap.
Yeah.
We agree on table dimensions and consent lights. We agree on initiation of match. You can get your grip for 0 to a minute.
Yes.
We agree that the referee's grip, that the athletes are closing their thumbs, that the athletes are closing their hands, and that infractions are called for thumb, wrist, and movement off center. I think the last thing to discuss is the running foul, because I have a feeling that we slightly have a different opinion there. Because I think that the way that the WAL used the running fouls was perfect. I think that the first person to make the infraction is the only person who accrues infractions, and that there is no getting back in the match. I think that once I commit a foul, the match is mine only to lose or to get a restart. I don't think that it's fair that the other person can foul and then the match is live. I've never agreed with that. I think that the first person to foul, it's their job to win and get a restart, or the other person has all the power. They can restart the match, they can lift their elbow, they can lose, get a restart, or they can win the match. The person who fouls first can continue to accrue fouls until they lose. Do you agree with that?
No, completely disagree.
Right.
So basically, if we're in a situation where, let me talk through the running foul. So, the running foul, as it was originally written. Myself and Devon are arm wrestling, and I create a small infringement, okay? Critical point. A small infringement to the point where the match can still be contested and is still a viable contested match.
What's the infringement?
Okay, so it was usually an infringement which is off the side of the pad, lifting up off the pad, so slight lift,
Okay.
momentary lift, not a long lift, it's a slight lift. It's a slight deviation of position off the front.
But still a foul.
Now, once you do that, once you are on a running foul, okay, the referee signals running foul. That guy is then aware that, number one, they're on a running foul, and most importantly, their opponent is aware that they are on a running foul. Now, at that time, the guy who was being fouled at pot. What the? That's like, dude, check that out. When did you buy that?
Yeah, it's not that old.
What? How many
It's not
days,
that old.
Dev?
Couple days.
There you go.
the thing
So
is
that is
like-
like the pizza equivalent of the green hoodie.
Here's what happened. I appreciate the offer a lot, but like, there's been a couple times that you've touched that with your foot during this,
I touched the
That
box.
thing. Look at
and you
that.
don't have any shoes on. So like,
Tell
I'm
him-
gonna say no.
Tell Brian where your gut flora is from.
Yeah.
Yeah, we know
T-
it.
tell him.
Yeah.
Tell him.
Kandahar. Oh, you know that story. Yeah.
Do you know that?
What's that? Kandahar?
Tell him. So you know where Kandahar, yeah?
No.
Tell him, dude. No, don't.
Anyways,
Tell him.
so I had to go on broad spectrum heavy antibiotics
Okay.
when I was in Kandahar.
Tell him why.
Yeah, I was shot, right?
Yeah.
So we're out in the middle of nowhere, right? And so I'm on broad spectrum antibiotics. So my whole system, yeah, very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful, broad range. There's nothing that's alive in my body.
Got it.
Nukes everything. So my entire gut flora, my entire system's birthplace is Kandahar.
Okay.
So, and it's terrible. It's like fecal count in the air. So I had diarrhea for like 6-7 months straight.
Oh, horrible.
Dude.
But now, like,
You're bulletproof.
yeah, you can't make.
That's where the concept of the green hoodie originated. People don't know this. Where it came from,
Yeah.
it's like a crocodile. Because like a crocodile, you can inject a crocodile with like Ebola, AIDS.
So this is
anything.
very clean.
And the thing...
It's no problem.
Nah,
Very clean.
It's good.
not bother him.
Yeah, yeah.
He... Look at him. Look at him. Look at him. Look at his goddamn feet. His feet are out of shot. He can eat things that there's like a tiger shark, a
That's-
friggin' crocodile,
And Devon.
and Devon
Yeah.
can eat them and live.
That's fair.
Nobody else could.
No.
Now the green hoodie, that thing was like a teenager's football sock.
Yeah.
I mean, you could hold it up, it'd stand up on its own,
It's just, yeah.
just as a form of its own. Because only thing that's washed less than the hoodies is that motherfucker.
Gennadi's got it now.
Yeah.
Gennady has it.
Dude, mate, that needs to be in quarantine somewhere in Tbilisi, right?
He took it home. I mean,
Like if you had like a rabid poodle or something.
You don't want it, yeah.
No, you don't want that around your family.
Yeah, yeah.
Gennadi might get much more powerful now.
Anything can happen.
He could.
Matt,
He may be
could.
much more powerful.
Yeah, it's like nuclear. You know,
that pizza,
it could be the same.
look at it. You want some, Jed?
Your
No, I
running
bet you
foul
don't.
system, Neil, is way too complicated.
See? Right, so running foul system, where are we up
Right
to?
back
So running
into it.
foul, you're aware of that.
All right, so just so we're aware,
Your
we-
opponent's
we
gone
can't-
on the
we
run.
can't go too much longer because we got to get this. Well, he's eating now, but we got to get me fed.
Are you sure?
No, don't
I'm
touch
good.
that,
I'm
Brian.
good.
You'll die,
Honestly,
man.
bro. Like I watched you touch
problem.
that. I watched you touch that with your.
Hey,
Can
foot
we
a
do
couple
like
times.
another?
problem.
Can we come back to
No
running
problem.
foul another time? Let's do that.
Okay, another time. We'll to
Let's
be
do- so
continued.
next couple of days we
We,
can
I think we need some sushi in.
look
our
at how he
lives.
eats that as well.
What?
Did you see that?
What he just inhales it. Is
It,
that what
it is though. Like, did you see it? Watch. It
no
just-
problem.
He goes in, maximum extent.
What kind of pizza is it? Do you want to update?
This is from Boston Pizza. This is the Hawaiian,
You got that on Tuesday, didn't you?
Korean.
You did, didn't you? He did. He did.
Okay.
It's now Thursday.
It's,
Hasn't been in the refrigerator.
no, was it?
Yeah.
It just actually gets better. A little
Like
bit.
a little bit of like
a little
bacteria.
bit. You know,
just- yeah.
a wise person once told me that the most important thing you're eating is bacteria. The most important.
When we were at Planet Fitness, the pizza dropped on the
Right.
floor. No problem.
Right.
Oh,
You got your
none of
you got your
that.
fats, you got your carbs, you got your proteins, you got your alcohols, but really there's this whole other thing that people don't look at, and it's all these little friends that you're bringing to the party.
Okay. Yeah.
You got more non-human cells in your body than you have human cells.
Okay.
That's where the force comes from.
The Force. So
That's-
you're right now eating the Force.
Yeah,
That's good.
that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, you people at home, you probably don't. I'm sure, in fact, that pizza is not coming across like it is to me and Brian.
If you ate,
We're sat here looking at that, and that is effectively cardboard. That's as cardboard as the box. Am I lying? It's pretty friggin'.
I mean, I don't really. I don't
watch
have a lot
Star
of
Wars?
words. I don't have a lot of words.
I have.
do you know about what is it, midichlorian? Is that what they're called, midichlorian? You know when they test
yeah.
for Jedi, they test you to see what your midichlorian count is.
What is it? Yeah, it's
Yeah, I
not
don't
that, but
know
yeah,
what that
I know what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah.
And if you have and they're little bacteria in the body.
Okay.
So the more bacteria you have in the body,
It's good.
Yeah, it's really good. Because, like, they're trying to, so they can actually see the future a little bit.
Okay.
So they keep you alive.
Very
so
good.
if something's going to happen, they actually know what's going to happen. And
I like it.
Yeah.
It's good.
Yeah, that's why I know what's going on.
He's not lying.
How you feeling, brother? You ready to rock and roll?
Yeah,
We're having this whole arm
you
wrestling
kill this
talk.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah, kill this guy.
Corey
Kill
West.
yeah,
What are we
mess
doing?
him up.
Yeah, left arm.
Yeah.
It's the first time the left gets tested since when?
It's been a while since probably, I don't know, it's been a bit. Yeah.
Yeah.
This will be,
When was your last lefty? So, wow.
might be, oh, no, it was Leonidas.
Our corner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, but like this will be. Look at this is North America '1. So
Yeah, it's
kind
big.
of a big deal.
Yeah, it's big.
Kind of a big deal. Yeah. No, I think gonna beat him. I think gonna beat him. At least that's what my little friends tell me.
Right there, they're talking to you. Yeah.
As you get more
This is great.
pizza goes
This is
in,
great.
Yeah.
and you look at that. Fuck.
You sure?
I
Yo,
wanna make
mate,
sure-
I have never been more sure
you know.
than
Yeah.
I am. When
funny.
you open that box, there's kind of a
on the
strange
floor.
smell comes.
Last, I
like
I
a-
was at Matt Mask's place
Strange.
a couple
smell,
years
that.
ago, and we got Boston pizza.
Yeah.
We got the shrimp one. We let that sit for a day or
Oh
two.
no, that's not
No.
good.
No, that wasn't good.
Devon.
That's not great.
Oh,
That was bad.
God.
That was probably horrible.
That one hit me pretty hard.
Yeah, I'll bet it is.
I can imagine.
But
I'll bet it is toilet
Yeah,
paper.
yeah.
but it's okay because I gained a lot of power. It's a bit rough. It's like the seas got a little bit stormy for a while.
Yeah.
I can imagine.
But
Yeah.
it's okay.
Yeah,
What were your
what were you
Mandalorians
thinking?
telling you at this point?
Well, they came in with violent force.
I bet
They
they
took
did.
over.
Like a little army of Mandalorian.
Like
fucking-
I had like a regular ecosystem, and in came a horde of dragons and
yeah.
and they scavenged the land. But now, inside here, I have a wolf pack and a dragon. That
Can you
sits.
hear them?
Yeah, the dragon is there just in case.
Okay.
If another dragon comes in, this dragon will kill that other dragon.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
So it's established.
It's good.
It has its place now.
The ecosystem is good.
If
Yeah.
if other dragons decide to come by, this dragon will kill them.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
I like your work, Devon.
Yeah, it's something. It's
You should throw that away.
I won't.
You should, though.
I have much more in my room.
Of same date.
I have some chicken.
Oh,
I have
good.
some other pizza. I have to be in tip-top shape for Corey.
Yeah, make sure you fit.
Tip-top.
Yeah.
let's go. I want to go get you some fresh food.
What are you trying to soften me up, Brian?
I mean, just fresh something. Like I
Fresh
want you to
food?
actually like. How about some premium fuel that your friends can eat with you?
Yeah.
You know.
I'd be down for that.
But how
Yeah,
accurate is that? Is that getting a good? Put your foot up. Show him a foot.
No, I can see the feet.
Look at them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at them. Look at that. He looks like he's some out of the Shire, doesn't he? Yeah. They're furry and stuff. Look, top of this foot here. Look at that. That's been hammered. That.
What can I say? Nobody's perfect. Okay?
That's been hammered.
Hey, it's all good, brother. You know what? You do you. Man, I appreciate you guys. I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I'm very hungry, and so we're shutting it down.
Yeah.
We'll talk about running fells another
Good talk.
Another time.
Good
Another
talk.
time. Yeah,
Arm
very
wrestling
good.
rules.
Yeah.
somewhere, people in WAF are blowing their heads off.
Don't leave
right
that in
now.
here. You take that with you.
Yeah, I will.
Don't leave that in here. I don't want that waking up middle of the night and taking me out.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? About 3 a.m. that bastard comes round, climbs out its box.
Yep.
It'll be gone by then. It'll be gone.
It'll be on you, that, won't it? Take down
That's
a
good.
cat, that pizza, then.
Yeah.
You see it then when he opened it up, it's snarling and fucking...
One of a kind,
Oh.
man.
Oh, Jody's with Tamara. Tamara Mitz is here. Yeah.
I've got places to
All
be.
right, we're out of here. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Give us a share. Let us know in the comments actually what you thought of that conversation. I'm curious.
Let
to
us know in
see.
the comments what you thought of that pizza.
Yeah. Also, yeah, comment on the pizza or Devon's feet. That'd be great. Go out and be great. We'll check you guys later. If you enjoyed this podcast episode and would like to listen to another, click right here. And to stay informed about new podcast episodes, click here to subscribe.